What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Extreme Drummers Podcast, episode 6. Hope everybody's doing well and keeping safe and relatively sane as this craziness continues. As always, huge thanks to everybody who's still listening and who's still loving the podcast. It's blowing me away how many people are still into this and loving it. And yeah, safe to say we got a lot of really cool guests coming up. But yeah, this week is a little bit different. My guest that was meant to be on this week had a bit of a last minute schedule change, and we tried to rearrange it to make it work, but with my schedule and their schedule couldn't make it work. And you know, this whole thing is no stress because no one's getting paid. This is all for fun, out of the joy of talking about drums. So so we just thought, screw it, we'll just do next week. So as of next week, it will be back to normal. But this week, I was thinking, should I just cancel and not do a podcast this week? But then I thought, I like the weekly thing. It's cool. Gives my week some momentum and helps. And you know, I thought it would be a bit crap after only a few episodes to have to not do an episode. Or I thought maybe I'll squeeze someone else in last minute, but then I thought that's not really fair on whoever I squeeze in, because I like to do a couple of days of prepping and, you know, catch up with what they've been up to and get some questions down. So so I just thought, screw it, I'll try this Q&A thing. And yeah, I've been absolutely blown away by the response and how many questions that have come in. So yeah, I've had over 50 questions. So I don't think I'm going to be able to get through all of them, but I'll get through as many as I can. I think I'm going to just cap it to 45 minutes to an hour maximum, because I think anything more than that will be way too boring. Listening to my dulcet tones for more than that's just going to be really boring and annoying. So, but yeah, massive thanks to everybody who sent in questions. I'll do my best to get through as many as I can. Maybe I'll do, because it's inevitable that there'll be probably a second time this happens where a guest has to rearrange, because I only ever line the guests up a week in advance. I'm not very prepared. Much like everything in my life, it's all a little bit last minute. So maybe I'll do a part 2 where I can answer ones that I don't get to answer. But either way, thank you so much. As always, you can keep up with the podcast in normal places like Instagram at Extreme Drummers Podcast, or Downwilding Drum, extremedrummerspodcast.com, YouTube, search Extreme Drummers Podcast. I think that's all the ways, and obviously all the regular stuff, Spotify and Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts I think it's called. Anyway, I'm rambling already. This is going to take forever. So I'm just gonna go for it. I'm going to start with the questions that I got messaged. I'm going to start with the ones that came through on the podcast Instagram, and then I'll move to my personal Instagram, and then Facebook, and then I'll move to comments, and I'll just try and get through as many as I can for you guys. I'll try not to ramble. I like to ramble. But episode 6, Extreme Drummers Podcast, is Q&A. Oh yeah, and I've had a couple of questions about, I can answer this straight off the bat. Had a couple of questions about the opening song, like what band is it, who is it? It's actually just me. I'm a little bit of a wannabe guitar player, and I came up with this riff a little while back, and I just recorded it into my computer with a guitar, kind of cheapy guitar plug-in, and my electronic drums, and that's what's become what I call the jingle. Obviously it's not a jingle, but yeah. So so there you go, first question answered. Extreme Drummers Podcast, episode 6. See you on the other side. And we're back. Me again. How's everybody doing? Right, so let's get straight into it, shall we? Right, so I'm on the Extreme Drummers Podcast. Messages. Right, so I think we're good. Are we good? Yeah. Right, I've got them lined up. So, I hope everybody doesn't mind me saying their names. Maybe I'll just say the first name. So then, if people don't want to get, I don't know. Right, anyway, so this is from Matthew. Coming from a touring drummer myself, what are some ways to keep yourself healthy on the road? I try to limit the amount I party, but with long drives and late nights, sometimes it's unavoidable to get burnt out. Yeah, absolutely, man. that's that's a tough one. Um, I think it all depends on the situation as well, because like again, I'm lucky. I've played in lots of different bands, but with Carcass, it's relatively easy, and I know that I'm very lucky for that because most of the time we have hotels and we have tour buses. We don't have to drive ourselves. It's relatively easy. You just have to try, and even then, though, like especially with Carcass, we do crazy traveling, like especially flying because Jeff loves to fly. So we've done on 2 occasions we've done Colombia trips where we've flown from to like random places in Colombia where we've done from, if I remember correctly, it was London to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Panama, Panama to Bogota, and then like a 3-hour drive from Bogota to the place we were playing, and it ended up being like 40 hours or something. And then we were there for 2 days, and then we returned home, did the exact same trip back. And we've done that twice. So yeah, like that just destroys you because sleep wise, and you just don't. You have to kind of weigh up sleeping or eating because you don't have time for both. So usually I just choose sleep because I love to sleep. But yeah, it's a tough one, man. I think when I was with Aborted, especially, and Trigger the Bloodshed, those times were a lot harder because we were driving ourselves every day, really long drives, as you said, and kind of not getting any sleep or sleeping on the side of the road, which is kind of impossible to get good quality sleep. But I think prioritizing food for me is a big one. Like there was a long time when I didn't prioritize food. I prioritized I don't know, kind of other meaningless shit, like there's food now, or if you catch a bus, then you can go into town and do a meet up or something, or go to a drum shop, or like go see this thing, and then I'd be destroyed by the time the gig came because I didn't eat, or so I think eating as well as you can, like even if you go to McDonald's, like try and get salad or try and get some kind of vegetables. Obviously partying is sometimes part of the job, but yeah, just always be aware, always drink as much water as you can. Hydration is a big one, especially as a drummer. Yeah, man, it's tough. Like I think prioritizing eating as good a food as you can, and sleeping as much as you can, and hydrating yourself, and not being sucked into the parties all the time. Like you can hang back and watch the parties happening while you drink a Pepsi or something, or a Coke, and not have a hangover. I've had that a few times, especially if you're driving. I find it helps if you're the driver. That's kind of, or maybe make yourself the driver, so you can't drink. But then obviously, it's maybe not quite as fun. But yeah, man, prioritizing as good food as you can, eating as much as you can, like 3 times a day, especially again drummer, physical, all that stuff. So, but yeah, it is tough. It is tough. But yeah, I hope that's helped. Right, the next one is from Chris Williams, who is a drummer for the band Shrapnel. Well, good drummer. Check him out, and check out Shrapnel. Good band. Avid listener of the podcast. So thanks, Chris. Yeah, so he said, your best memory playing live and your worst. That's it's a good one. I've got a lot of bests. Like I can off the top of my head. The first show we ever did, the first show I ever played with Carcass was a game changer for me because, well, obviously it was playing with Carcass, but it was such a whirlwind. We played the Underworld. We did 3 nights at the Underworld, and before that, I'd already been in the band for 2 years, and we'd recorded, and we hadn't released Surgical Steel yet, but we'd recorded it, but we'd never played a show together, which was fucking crazy. And yeah, there was obviously we booked these Underworld gigs kind of last minute, and it was 3 nights, and all of us were stressed and all of us were nervous. I think Bill and Jeff more so than me and Ben because it was their band, and they hadn't played since in like 13 years or something, or whatever it was. So so there was so much stress and everybody was nervous, and like the sound check was kind of nervous, and we're all like we're all kind of being nice to each other and whatever, and everyone was happy, but under the surface there was this boiling pressure and nervousness. And I remember it like clear as day. It was even to the to the middle of the gig, to the middle of the show. Like the crowd was going incredible. Like we were playing really well. The sound was great. Like it was all good, but I couldn't relax. Like I was still thinking too far ahead of myself. I was just like, don't fuck up. What's coming next? What's the next transition? What's the count in for the next song? But it was. I remember the minute, because we almost always do like an intro and then heartwork. We still do that to these days. Like we'll play something and then it will go straight into heartwork. And I think we played corporeal into heartwork. Anyway, but yeah, heartwork was the last song, and I remember we started heartwork, and then after the blast bit when the main riff comes in, the I remember just it hit me then, and like I was like, oh my god, I'm on stage. I'm not playing a cover. Like I'm on stage with Bill and Jeff, like playing in Carcass, a Carcass song. And I'd played Heartwork in other bands. I'd listened to it a million times. And it was just this crazy, surreal, unbelievable moment that obviously has stuck with me this whole time. So that's a really good. Another one was again, I got a bunch of really good ones. The first time with Carcass, when we played Argentina, we played Buenos Aires in this old theatre, and it was just, there was loads of people there, and from the start to finish they just didn't stop going absolutely crazy, singing the songs. It was like a football crowd, where they like sing all the riffs, and we loved it so much. Like we had a hour and 20-minute set, but then like after it, all of us were just loving it so much. Like Jeff was just shouting songs at us, like, right, let's play this now. And we were like, oh shit, we hadn't practiced that one. Oh, well, fuck it, they don't care. There was like 2,000 people just kind of jamming along with us while we just had fun and jammed songs out. That was mind blowing. That was incredible. And the first time we played Japan, because I'd never played Japan before. Always wanted to go to Japan. Always wanted to play Japan. And we played this festival called Loud Park, which is a big festival in Tokyo in this massive indoor arena. And again, it was similar to the Underworld shows, I think, because we were all kind of nervous and stressed because Japan's big for everybody. I think Japan's got this kind of real kind of tie with metal music. It's always been, a kind of holy grail place to go and play. And we had this really good slot on this festival, and it was just from the opening song to the end, it was just magic. Like the crowd was just incredible, and we all played really well. The sound was good, and that will always stick out as one of the best. And also I met Mitch from Tama afterwards, and he asked if I wanted to be a Tama endorsee, and I was like, fuck yeah. So that was like that was still one of the best moments. Another moment. We had a crazy moment with Heaven Shall Burn. I played with Heaven Shall Burn for a couple of years, for anyone who didn't know. We headlined this festival called With Full Force in Eastern Germany. We had two setups because they always pride themselves in doing like really cool live show setups, and we had this thing called a kabuki, which is a backdrop, but it's on kind of hydraulic clips. So when you press a button, the backdrop just drops. And in front of this kabuki, we had like a small setup, like a 4-piece drum kit and like half stacks, like a little punk setup. And for the first few, this was main stage at With Full Force headlining set, and for the first few songs, it was like a punk set, like not really any lights, no real production, just this little punk thing. And then for their big song, which is Insight, when the intro went off, we went behind this kabuki, and behind the kabuki there was like this 3-meter drum riser, pyrotechnics, like CO2 cannons, LED wall, like there's this fucking crazy Rammstein-esque setup. And when the song kicked in, the kabuki dropped, and the pyrotechnics went off, and it was just like a magical situation. The crowd was incredible. There was this crazy storm happening as well, so there was like lightning going, and like insane like torrential rain, and it was just magic. And like we played really well. The crowd were incredible. It was exhausting though because I didn't have a drum tech, and I had to set up I had to set up 2 full drum kits on 2 separate risers, and I had to break it down at the end of the day. So it was a long day and a lot of emotion, and it was incredible. As far as worst moments, I mean, these are little things that they always stay with me. But I remember once in Richmond, Virginia, of all places. Oh God, I can't remember the name of the venue. It's a classic venue in Richmond. But I put my drum rug on top of a rug that was already on stage. Just stupidly in my kind of absent-mindedness, and my left bass drum pedal, the spikes that are meant to go kind of through the drum cover into the ground, they were going through to another rug. So the left pedal just constantly was moving forward, literally every time I hit it, it would just move forward, and it was a fucking nightmare. And I had to, I can't remember what I did, but we found some kind of like, I don't know, it was like a brick or some kind of weight, and we had to put it in front of that, but it still kept moving. Oh, it's just awful. Another one was when a massive monitor wedge fell on my back, which wasn't very nice. I managed to just about keep playing, but I really fucked my back up there. Like, it just wasn't kind of screwed down properly, and just out of nowhere I was in the middle of a song and it just fell on me, and I was like, oh, what the fuck is that? And this massive monitor wedge was just slammed me into almost headfirst into my drums. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, so that's a couple. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being a legendary drummer. Right, this one is from Max. What routine would you recommend for increasing both hand and foot speed? I've hit a wall and can't seem to get any faster. Right. This is quite a common question, actually. There's a few people that ask this. I definitely find that increasing speed is a definite little and often thing. This is from my experience, and I can only tell you from my experience, of course. But little and often, so I'd say, even 5 or 10 minutes a day of doing kind of what me and Dan Preslin were talking about, this kind of drills, like so an exercise I've used pretty much since the start of my drumming career, as it were, is just playing the half-time groove. So half-time means snare on the 3, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And underneath that, just playing straight 16th note single stroke roll. And then obviously on your right hand or your leading hand, you just keep time. So you play a quarter note or eighth note thing on your right hand. And then just play straight 16th notes underneath, and 16ths, with the same, at the same tempo is counted like 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4E and a, for anyone who doesn't know what 16ths are. And like, even now, if I'm trying to build my speed up again, because I don't play a lot of speed drumming anymore, like super fast speed drumming anyway. If I want to build up my speed again, I will just do that over and over and over again. And even now, I start at a really comfortable tempo. So a super comfortable tempo for me is 120, 120 beats per minute, and I'll do 120 beats per minute for like a minute, 2 minutes straight, and then I'll move up in 10 beat per minute increments. So 120, 130, 140, all the way up till, I can play 16 notes for about 60 seconds comfortably at about 210, 215 these days, 220 on a good day. So I just work up that, and that's kind of my speed regime even now. And that can take 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. But the key is that I really don't think pushing yourself crazy amounts is a great idea. It's never worked for me. It's always burnt me out, and it's always set me back more. So I found little and often like that. So like even 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, just doing, even if you do 120 to 150, so like 120 or 100 to 100 beats per minute to 150, with just doing that basic groove over the top with just straight 16th notes underneath for as long as you can, going from 100 once you've done 1 or 2 minutes of that, 110, 120, 130, up until you feel comfortable. The main thing is control, like understanding at each tempo what your feet want to do and what they're trying to do. And the slower you go and the more comfortable you get at each of these slower tempos, the more you can figure out how to adjust what you need to do to go faster. Because speed is all about relaxation and control. So, and also, side note, you might be able to guess who next week's guest is, but he's probably the best person to ask about all this stuff. So I'll make sure I get some of these questions in next week's podcast. But so What was I saying? I've totally forgot what I was saying. Fuck. Oh yeah. So, control. So the more control you have, and the slower you do stuff, and you understand what your feet are doing at those slower tempos, you can then transpose that even higher. And the more time, like when you get to a tempo that's challenging, because in theory, because you've got all this knowledge at the slower tempos, and you're super comfortable at those slower tempos, you can think, okay, at that slower, when I was getting used to that tempo, I had to do this, to make it easier. Maybe I'll try that and this. Oh, that didn't work. Maybe I'll try something else. So it's consistency, it's control. Don't worry about speed. Like, speed comes with time. It really does. So just focus on control, consistency, and yeah, relaxation, man. Like, you gotta really try and relax, especially if you're hitting a plateau. Like 180 is always that classic plateau level. It was for me as well, and I really had to learn how to relax into the stall and let my pedals and ankles do more of the work, as opposed to my upper, my upper legs and my upper body and my, my whole leg. You got to move away from that the faster you go. And I think, yeah, consistency. And also the annoying thing is, and anyone will tell you this, once you gain that speed, maintaining that speed is incredibly hard, because you have to keep doing that. You have to keep doing it every single day, like literally every single day. I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, but even having a week or two off can completely fuck you up. I guess it's because it's all muscles, isn't it? It's like going to the gym. If you had, 6 months off at the gym, you wouldn't just go straight in and try and lift what you were lifting 6 months ago. I assume, anyway. I'm not a gym person, so maybe that's a completely terrible analogy, but yeah, either way, I hope that helps. And also, I've been working on it for about a year now, almost, but I've got some very interesting, cool, educational lesson stuff coming out soon. So anyone who's interested, please keep posted on my social media, because there'll be some stuff about that soon. Right, cool. So next one. This is from Jacob. Do you have any tips for drummers trying to make playing their career? Good question. Not really. No, I'm joking. I don't know. I think, oh man, it's tough. It's really tough, because we've talked about this on the podcast before too. I think it's quite dangerous getting into drumming and music in general, expecting it to be a career, because it's so hard to make money. Like, being completely transparent, I've only really made money as a drummer since I've been in Carcass. Really, I made some money with Heaven Shall Burn. Made a tiny bit of money with Aborted, but it is incredibly hard to make money, man. And I think what you have to do is just, and this is from my experience, I never ever expected that I would be the drummer in Carcass. I never ever expected I'd be the drummer of Heaven Shall Burn. I never even expected to be the drummer of Aborted. And I was a fan of these bands growing up. Massive fan, still a fan of all of those bands, obviously, and I think you have to do it because you love it, and you have to do it because you want to do it, that should be your driving force, not money, not fame. I know, again, that's probably easy for me to say in my position, but a big one for me, as well, has always been, and this is largely because I just love drums so much and I love playing, is you have to say yes to pretty much everything. Like, if there's an offer, if anyone offers you to do something, any project, just say yes, because you never know who's going to be involved in that project and who's going to hear it and who's going to be like, you could think it's nothing. And then, you say yes and you do it, and it turns out the manager of some other band is a friend with the person that you did the song with, or, you just never know where your drumming is going to turn up, or you're creating, if you're not a drummer. So just say yes to as much stuff as you can, play with as many people as you can. Also, and this is a big one too, I've talked about this on other podcasts, not on my podcast I don't think yet, but like, just be a nice person. Like, don't be a dick. Like, I know that's easy to say, but try and remove your ego from as many situations as possible, and try and think that you are the least important person in each situation. That's how I try and approach everything, is like, especially when you're sessioning, man, because, like, if you're a session guy and you come in and act like you're more important than the band or the artist that you're there to do a session for, then you've already lost. Like all the people I know that have had successful careers or are especially session people are just like the nicest, most chilled, super cool people. And yeah, you just gotta try and remove your ego, try and remove your expectations, and just do it because you love it and say yes to stuff. I mean, you don't have to, if you really don't want to do something, don't say yes. Like, I'm not saying say yes to absolutely everything, even if it's doing something that means you're going to cry, because it's still music at the end of the day. You have to enjoy it on some level. But yeah, playing with as many people as possible. And I think there's a great so as much as we talk shit about social media especially is such a great tool to get your drumming out there. But I think the thing to be aware of is to be honest. Like, don't try and do what someone else is doing. Like, try and do what you're doing, and try and be as you as possible. Because again, this goes back to being in a band or being a session player. Like, if they want, I like what this guy does, well, then they'll probably just get that guy. So it's good to be able to play different stuff, but it's also, from my experience, again, this is all from my experience, they, most artists or producers or whatever will want you to give a version of what they want. So they won't want it to, they'll say, they could say, I want you to do a Dave Lombardo bit, but they're not expecting it to sound exactly like Dave Lombardo. It'll be, I want to hear your interpretation of something Dave Lombardo would do. And that's why I think it's, just be honest, man, because if you're doing something honest, then you'll always enjoy it, I think, even if it doesn't bring you money. So, anyway, I'm rambling loads on these, so I hope that helps. But yeah, I guess these are all quite tough questions. But right, okay, so next one is Wizard of Middle-earth. Cool name. Favorite type of blast beats and why? Favorite non-traditional metal beats you like to hear in metal? Favorite blast beat, hands down, is just traditional blast. I still think it's the best. The 16ths on the hands with eighth note bass drums on the ride is, I think it's just the best. I really like I don't know what they're called, like the hyperblast things, where you're playing like eighth, like da 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 on the snare, with double kicks going crazy, 16th notes underneath, and like Inferno from Behemoth does them a lot, where like changes the accents up on the china over the top of that. But yeah, just the traditional blast, man, still sounds the best. When you hear a good clean blast beat, traditional blast, it's still just fucking killer. So that one's a winner for me. And favorite non-traditional, I don't know, that's tough. There's a lot of that. I really like what Dan Presland does. Like, those kind of things are cool when people bring in other influences into extreme. That's why I really like Eloy Casagrande too, because he brings the Brazilian samba stuff in, and his phrasing and his accents are really interesting and really cool. I really like Dirk Verburen. He's one of my favorite drummers of all time. He comes up with some really cool stuff, and he's got like a crazy swing. He can just groove. But yeah, just people who bring stuff that's not just there's nothing wrong with that. I do that a lot. But people who, and things that maybe aren't traditional in extreme metal. So anyone that's doing that, I'm big into. So yeah, thank you for the question. Right, so this one was a good one. So this is from Ike, I believe. What's up, Dan? I've been experiencing on and off again problems in my snare wrist, and was wondering how you've been working to manage the wrist issues you have. Do you think it's more of a repetition-related injury from exceeding normal range of motion, etc., etc.? Right, so this is really interesting because, so I had some wrist issues recently. I've had wrist issues in the past, but it was pretty debilitating. I can't talk. Debilitating a little while back, and turns out I had to go to I didn't have to, but I chose to go to a what are they called? Is it physiotherapist? I guess it is. Yeah. Anyway, and I had some kind of therapy, and turns out I had, and I have again now, a huge amount of tension in my upper body, and it's linked to posture. I think it's definitely linked to bad habits in drumming. So like like for example, one of the things I'm trying to work on at the moment is improving my left hand technique for blast beats, especially because I've used this thing that's kind of a bodge technique for a while, and it it works, but it's just not good, and I sometimes end up at the end of a gig with like burning wrists and stuff, and it's like I can just tell it's just not great. Um, and on a good day, I can pull off like what I consider quite good left hand technique, but when I'm in a gig situation with stress, when I'm in my practice room, I can really pull off much better technique on my left hand, and I know all the theory and all that kind of stuff, but when you've got the pressure of live and tired because of jet lag or whatever, I always end up going back to this kind of bad habit technique, and it's I think it's things like that, and my posture. I know my posture's not perfect, that have caused kind of tension in my upper body, and it resonated in my wrist so much so that when I was moving some guitar amps around or something at the band storage space, and something just twinged in my arm, and like I couldn't move my wrist, and it was like 2 weeks before a long festival run as well, which was fucking nightmare. But yeah, I had this therapy, this physiotherapist who said basically you've got a lot of tension and needed to release a bunch. So did a bunch of stuff that helped remove tension in these certain pressure points, and it helped. Like I was getting migraines too, like I was getting regular migraines, like really harsh migraines, and it was all linked. So I think from what I can tell, because I think Ike goes on to say about his experience, he says, I think it has a lot to do with me playing in a cold practice space. So I think from that all kind of goes back to the same thing. I think that's it's tension, because when you're cold and you're not warmed up, your body's going to be tense and it's not going to be as relaxed as it wants to be. So I think warming up and playing in a warm practice room, or just warming up carefully before you do stuff, really, really helps, I think. And obviously I've been a lot more aware of my posture and aware of my technique ever since. I'm getting some more wrist issues now, but I've also noticed it ties in because I've got two young children, and I notice when I pick them up a lot, I think the way I hold them puts a lot of pressure on my left wrist, because a lot of the time I hold them in my left hand, and they're older now and they like kick around and they fuck around, and they're just tantrums and all that kind of shit, and I notice a lot of pressure on my wrist when that happens, and I've had a few wrist problems recently, and I've noticed that's a thing. So it's almost non-drumming related things that have affected my drumming. And I think it's from the sounds of it, it sounds like you may be having a similar thing, especially if it's cold. That will be a big one, because your body's straining to try and warm itself up and to try and do these things. On a side note, I also drumsticks really played a big part in my. I used to use really big drumsticks. Like I used to use marching sticks initially. And then I moved down to like Vic Firth rocks, and then I moved down to 2Bs, and I used 2Bs for a long, long time. But I kept intermittently getting problems with my index finger, like nerve issues in my index finger, and it was awful. And then I just decided, like I was practicing one day in my practice room, and this thing wouldn't go away, and I started using lighter sticks. Like I went right down to, I had an old pair of 5As lying around, and it just disappeared. And then then I went back up to 3As, and then 5Bs, and then eventually up to 2Bs again, and then within about 2 months it came back. And I've realised now it's obviously something I do when I play with bigger sticks. Maybe my hands aren't made to play with bigger sticks or whatever, or maybe again it's to do with my posture changes because the sticks are bigger. I don't really know, but so now I've kind of settled on a 5B, and I've never had any issues since I've been using 5Bs. So again, you could try looking at your sticks, posture again, be relaxed, be in a nice warm setup, and try and avoid tension at all costs. Right. Okay, cool. So I hope that helps. Right, so Richie says, what is your biggest pet peeve when you watch or hear other drummers play, and live or studio? Ah, nice. That's a little quiz question. Interesting one. Biggest pet peeve. Oh, okay. So I mean, I guess I can take. It's in extreme metal drumming. It's when players don't play with any power. If that makes sense. So like, I get there is it's a bit of a derogatory term, but tappers, I guess, people that don't. I know, and I know with a lot of faster drumming, it's hard to have power, but there are a lot of drummers out there that do that play with power and oomph at the fast tempos, and I don't know, it doesn't impress me when someone's super 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 fast, but they're literally like brushing the snare drum and the ride cymbal. Like yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine when people don't kind of put, because it totally changes the sound. We've talked about this before. Like there is a point where you hit too hard and it makes something boxy and weird, but also too light and it just doesn't really sound like anything. It doesn't have any power, and so that's a pet peeve for me, I think. Sorry to anyone who that may offend. But and live or studio, 100% live. I love the studio, but the pressure of the studio is I don't know, it just gets to me. I'm a big in the moment kind of player, or always have been. I like to improvise a lot, and I've always been a big improviser, and I just like I find that's harder in the studio, and I hate going over the same thing over and over and over again, and doing 5 takes of the same song. Like, again, I do enjoy the studio. I like the creative process, but live is definitely where my passion sits in the drumming realm. So, but yeah, obviously, the studio is a necessary evil for all this. But and maybe it's maybe I just need more experience in the studio. I don't know. But obviously, I've played live a lot. Most of the sessions I do, if I do sessions outside of my bands, they've always been live sessions, apart from a handful of studio things. But yeah, I also think it's down to the producer. If you find a good producer engineer, then yeah, like the guy who did the last Carcass album, David Castillo. He's just a shout out to David if you're listening. He's yeah, just great producer, super relaxed, really nice vibe, and he's a drum nerd too, so that's great. But yeah, cool. Right, moving on. So this is from TP Heffernan. Is there a noticeable difference in Tama Iron Cobra 600 and Tama Speed Cobra double kick pedals? If I'm honest, dude, I don't really know. I'm not really the one to tell you that. I've never tried the 600 series. I would assume they are great. Because if I'm honest, I think there's a little bit too much emphasis put on what type of pedal you play. It's like it honestly doesn't really matter. I've seen some unbelievably good players play on like single chain. I mean, fucking Gene Hoglan. Until recently, I don't know if he still does, but he plays on old Camco pedals, and he's from the 80s or whatever, and he still rips. So I think just try them out in a shop. I think if you can, I mean, obviously now that's gonna be a little bit trickier, but yeah, just try them, dude. And I think honestly, you can pretty much make most pedals work for you, with enough time spent on them. Don't worry too much about the pedal though. Honestly, like if they're really cheap and rusty, then yes. But anything from any of the big brands, obviously especially Tama, shout out Tama, is going to be killer. So like I'd learnt how to play double bass on the Iron Cobra Junior double pedal, and I had that for I think 5 years before I upgraded, and I probably didn't. I probably could still be playing on them now, but actually I've got one of them. I got one. I can't remember what it was with a kit I bought. Oh, it was in America. We've got a Tama. Oh, what's it called? Silver Star, and that's the kit that we have over there for touring over there. And it's stored at a friend's house, and it came with a hardware pack with the Iron Cobra Junior. And I remember when I first got it, I was playing it. I was like, oh fuck, this thing feels sick. I might use this. And everyone was laughing at me like, oh, you always do this. You always change your mind and change your gear every 2 minutes, which is true. I do change my mind and my gear every 2 seconds. But yeah, I wouldn't worry, man. Focus more on the playing, I'd say. And don't worry too much about gear. Gear is, it's, what's that saying? A bad workman blames his tools. So yeah, just, yeah, hope that helps. Right, so this is from Dario. I hope I'm saying that right. Right. Oh, there's like 7 questions here. Right, the first one's tour horror stories, anything from being almost killed or food poisoned to stage tech disasters. I told you about the. I won't spend too much time on that because I've already said about the monitor stuff. Party stories. Nothing. I mean, out of the ordinary. I mean, drinking Jägermeister with Kerry King was a highlight of my life when we toured with Slayer. Um, go to albums for inspiration. Oh, that's okay. That's a good one. Let's try that one. Go to albums for inspiration are usually still the ones that were big influences when I was young. So, South of Heaven by Slayer is a classic. That really kind of, I guess what a lot of the stuff I do is I'll listen to older stuff that really got me into drumming. So, yeah, Slayer. I'll listen to oh God, I can't think off the top of my head now. But yeah, so like the albums that I got into earlier, because I think it kind of reignites in a lot of ways, it reignites your kind of passion again, because it reminds you of that place that you were in, if that makes any sense. Yeah, and I find I try not to, when I'm writing stuff, I try not to listen to too many. Like, I definitely don't listen to new drummers, and I try not to watch like YouTube videos and stuff, because like a big thing for me is when you're preparing for the studio is trying to be realistic with your drum parts. So if you see something like some drummer's just done and you're like, shit, I don't know how to play that, I'm going to write that for the studio in 6 weeks, then it's never going to be a fully formed, fleshed version of what you want to play. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I often go back to the kind of original albums that I can't even think of any, man. Put me on the spot. My mind's gone completely blank. But yeah, South of Heaven is a big one for me. Oh shit, right. Yeah, I'll have to think about that in a maybe in another one. But yeah, right. So what's the next one? Practice regimes you found were favourite. Yeah, so this goes back to the building speed. I'm not really a super strict practicer, but I always try and do like a speed drills as they were. Try and do them as regularly as possible. So as far as a go-to, I think that's a really, really good thing to do, is again just 5-10 minutes a day. Just focusing on your speed. And yeah, so I still try and do that. So otherwise, generally when I'm practicing, what I try and do is I like to, as I said, I like to improvise a lot. So I'll improvise. I'll just jam around on the kit, and then when I stumble on something, so like if I try and do something and I can't do it, I'll kind of write that down and then slow that down and be like, oh, okay, right, how do I get to a point where I can do this better? And I'll spend as much time as I feel I need to spend on it until I move on to something else. And that's kind of a good way I've found when I'm kind of looking for things to practice. Or like, yeah, at the moment I'm trying to work on my left hand, so that's taking up a lot of my thought process. But yeah, so that's just kind of I think it's good to have some kind of consistency in your practicing. So like, again, like try and put in a 5 minutes where you just work on rudiments or something, or 5 or 10 minutes where you just work on speed, or 5 minutes where you just work on technique or something. And then at least for 10 minutes you've been productive, and then the rest of the time you can just play. Obviously, if you have the mental capacity to do longer than that, then that's cool. But yeah, so at what point did you start taking drumming seriously? Day one. Literally, I put the blinkers on from day one. I was like, this is all I want to do forever, and I just kind of so quite genuinely I was obsessed and incredibly serious from day one. How to get over slumps, or how do you get over slumps or practice barriers, plateaus? That's a good one. Oh, I guess I've just covered that, really, haven't I? Kind of, what was I saying? Yeah, so a good way is to get something kind of regular into your kind of practice routine. So even if it's, because like just doing those speed drills, I find forcing yourself to do them, even if that's all you do in a day, then you're improving. Do you know what I mean? So like, even if you do 5 or 10 minutes of just working on your speed or just working on your double bass drum control or your, whatever, then at least you've done 5 or 10 minutes of something. And a lot of the time when you've done 5 or 10 minutes of these speed drills or whatever, then the body's kind of warmed up and you're feeling a bit more pumped, and then you naturally get a little bit more inspired to play. So I find, so just kind of force yourself into doing those things. Next, again, is what I just said there. So do some improvising, mess around on the kit, and then anything you stumble on, just be like, oh shit, I need to work on that, and then take it from there. So yeah, and I think that's about it. Right, now I'm going to move on to. I hope this is all helping, and I hope it's not too boring. I'm going to move on to my personal Instagram page and answer some of the questions on here. Right then, so I'm going to start with. Let's have a look. God, there's quite a few. Again, sorry if I can't get through all these because there's like over 50, which was incredible. Thank you so much to everybody. But yes, right. Right, so I think this is Rob. His Instagram handle is Certified Shitter. Very good. What were your biggest influences for your drum style, and how did you go about getting into the metal scene? Also, if you could piece together one massive metal band with any members from any group, who would you pick and why? Wow. Okay, so biggest influences, early on when I first started, it would have been like first started when I was a kind of not even a teenager. It would have been Dave Grohl, Travis Barker, probably. It was a lot of time and place stuff because I was almost a teen, and those bands were Foo Fighters and Nirvana and Blink-182 were just the biggest things ever. So they definitely would have been early. Moving up, obviously, then I got into Slayer. That changed my life. So Lombardo for sure, still massive influence. First handful of extreme metal drummers that changed my life were Nick Barker for sure. Puritanical Euphoric Misanthropia by Dimmu Borgir was one of the first extreme metal albums that I bought. Cruelty and the Beast and Midian by Cradle of Filth too. So Adrian, I want to try and get Nick on the podcast because he's a fucking legend in multiple senses of the word. So they were big ones. Extreme metal. Oh, Nile, In Their Darkened Shrines and Annihilation of the Wicked were big ones for me. Extreme metal wise. How did I get into the metal scene? I'm assuming you mean how did I kind of start playing shows and like getting into bands? I assume, or I was going to shows from as early as I could, as early as my parents would let me, and I'm lucky. I mean, the UK's always had quite good. There's quite a lot of bands. It's the UK. I guess everybody kind of comes here for the most part. So there was always a lot of gigs. So I'd always go to gigs. And in secondary school, I found a whole group of people that were into metal, and they became my best friends. And a lot of them are still my best friends today. And we just went to gigs together and met people and all that kind of stuff. The way I got into my very first band was a band from Brighton called Killing Mode. I was still in high school, and these guys were, I think, in their late 20s, 30s. But yeah, back in the days, way before proper internet, it was dial-up. Anyone who remembers that? I was searching on forums for bands that needed drummers, metal bands that needed drummers, and there was this Brighton band called Killing Mode, so they were looking for a drummer, and I was like, fuck it, I'll try it. So I sent him I can't remember if I sent him a letter or an email. But yeah, anyway, he replied and sent me some tapes, I think, or CDs with some songs on, and I auditioned, and I was like some fucking tiny kid, and like 15, and these were all like grown men, and they knew everything about extreme metal, and I'd only just heard Nile like 6 months before. But and that was the start really. I got hooked on being in a band, and we did some not tours, we did like some kind of local-ish tours, and we played with a whole bunch of cool bands. Like we played with Napalm Death and Crisian and Vader, and it was just it was sick, and I just got hooked on the metal scene and being in a metal band, and kind of moved on from there, obviously. But if I could piece together one massive metal band with any members from any group, who'd you pick and why? Shit, man, that is hard. Oh, dude, I don't know. I mean, one of my favorite guitarists at the moment is Brandon Ellis from Black Dahlia. Shout out to Brandon. He's probably not listening to this, but if you are, you're sick. Love you. Um, that's a good one, man. Vocals. Oh man, I'm gonna have to come back to this. Right, I'll think about it, and I'll message you privately about that one, or maybe I'll come back to it if I do another one of these Q&A things. Yeah, that's too tough. I should have thought about this. Right, but yeah, so Brandon Ellis would be in there for sure. Okay, and Bill Steer, obviously, best guitar player I've ever played with, and just a legend and a lovely guy. I don't know what this music would sound like, Brandon and Bill, but bass. Ooh, who would I have on bass? I don't know. I should probably say Jeff, shouldn't I? Oh no. Oh man, I don't know. I really don't know. Right, I'll come back to that one. I don't want to waste your time with this dead air. So right. So next one is from Jordan. Drummer or drummers which greatly influenced you growing up. I think I've covered that one. With Lombardo, Nick Barker, Adrian Lanson, Dave Grohl, Travis Barker. Oh, 2 Barkers in there. I think so. So yeah. Any funny tour stories? Again, I think have I covered tour stories? Can't really remember. Oh, I was thinking about a funny Trigger the Bloodshed thing that happened the other day. Like with Trigger the Bloodshed, we were like full on DIY touring. We had this old, really rusty Royal Mail delivery van that they turned into like this bandwagon thing. They had it when I joined the band, and this thing was so old and like crusty and stank, and it had holes in the roof that we gaffer taped up. And one day we were driving super early in the morning to the airport to go fly to Tuska Festival in Finland, and we were just like, oh my god, we're playing Tuska, it's like this legendary festival, and we were getting like a genuinely good fee for it, which we couldn't believe, and the promoter paid for our flights and everything. It was like, oh my god. And then we were driving in the van, all of us, and like halfway down the motorway, the clutch just exploded somehow. So I can't remember what it was, the gear stick or something happened, and it just died. And we pulled over and we were like, oh my god, we're never gonna make it. And we called the the roadside people, the AA, and somehow by some miraculous thing, they managed to do some quick fix, and we made it to the airport and on the last minute. And we got there, and it was just sick. It was an amazing gig, and we hung out and drank with Cannibal Corpse and a couple of members of Megadeth, and it was just amazing. But I mean, man, there's so many stories, but that was one I was thinking about the other day. So there you go. There's one story. Finally, favorite flavor of Pringles, keeping in theme of the end of podcast questions. Good one. I just like ready salted, dude. I know that's boring as fuck, but yeah, man. Like, I don't like all those fake flavors. I think they're a little bit, I don't know, they're a bit much. So, just ready salted, dude. They're so addictive, especially Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. Right, so let's move on to... Right, this is from Philip. Hello, Dan. I have 2 questions. When you're talking about 200 plus BPM with double bass or blast, are you saying at a quarter note, 8th note, or 16th note pulse? 16th note, generally, people will be talking about. I think I explained that earlier. Yeah, so 16th notes, pretty much exclusively, I think is what people are talking about. Right, second, top 5 favourite drummers and the albums by them that you love influenced you. Ooh, right, okay, that's tough. So favourite is different to influential. I guess I'll give you some of my favourite drummers right now. Some of my favourite drummers are Kevin Parody, who is from Benighted and a session drummer. He's sick. If you don't know him, YouTube him. Just unbelievably good extreme metal drummer. Nick Yakashin from Baptists and Sumac. Again, don't know who he is. Um, Google him or YouTube him. He's incredibly good. Shout out Nick. This is hard, man. Favorites. Obviously, Dan Presland, Krim, Ash, Adrian, everyone I've had on the podcast so far, and Alan, obviously. Dirk Verburen has always been a favourite for me, and I'm hoping to get him on the podcast very soon. You said 5. I've probably had more than 5. So yeah, there's a handful of good ones. Most influential, again, I'd say Lombardo, Dirk's in there, Nick Barker, Adrian. And Abe Cunningham, random from the Deftones, is a huge influence of mine. I haven't mentioned him yet. So much so that when we were recording Surgical Steel, I can't remember what song I was recording, but I went into the control room after I'd recorded it, and the engineer Carl was like, "Are you a fan of Deftones by any chance?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, fucking love Deftones." And he was like, "Yeah, a bunch of your stuff really reminds me of Abe's drumming." And I was like, "Oh shit, I've just brought a bunch of Deftones stuff into Carcass music, so sorry, Carcass fans, probably not huge fans of that, but yeah." So hope that helps. I hope I answered those, but yeah. So favorite albums: South of Heaven, Puritanical Euphoric with Xanthropia. Around the Fur by Deftones is a good Deftones one. The first Slipknot album changed my life too. Joey Jordison, big one. Again, I think that was a time and place. I was a young angsty teen. There's so many. Shit. Again, George Colias on. Derek Roddy on. That Hate Eternal album. I'm on Arc. That was again a game changer when that came out. Like fucking hell. This just it was insane. So there's a few. Right. So this is Graham. Graham's a big fan. Met him before. Graham. Shout out Graham. What's going on, dude? Hope you're well. Thanks for these were really cool questions. So try and get through them quickly because I think I'm almost at an hour, and there's a lot more questions to go. So I'll do a few more, and then I'll give up for today. Right. So question number 1: how do you feel the impact of Brexit and visa fiascos will have an effect on bands, and in particular Carcass? Yeah. So, I assume most people that are listening to this know what Brexit is, but if not, it means the UK is now a separate entity from the EU, and therefore people travelling into the EU from the UK have to have separate visas, as far as we're aware anyway, especially musicians. And this is the thing at the moment. Obviously, it's a very political, controversial issue, but it's gonna massively affect every musician, for sure, 100%. I think bands at Carcass's level and above, and even below, I think we're gonna be all right because we have to deal with these things anyway. Like, we have to deal with getting visas, and we have to deal with carnets. Carnets are where you declare what gear you take in to a certain country, and if it's going to stay there, and if you're trying to sell it, and blah blah blah, all that stuff. So we already have to deal with that stuff. So we already have, but from traveling as much as we do to the States and Asia and South America and everywhere. So we're kind of quite well versed in doing all that stuff, and a lot of every band at our level and above and below is as well. And also, thankfully we have the budget behind us to be able to deal with these things. The thing that I think is going to be really tough is bands that don't have that money behind them, and more underground bands, or not even underground bands. Just I've got a lot of friends in bands that have had to they've had to pretty much stop the band because, and that's largely from the COVID thing. Obviously the COVID situation, and then obviously the Brexit situation on top is just another nail in the coffin, as it were. So yeah, Brexit's really gonna affect them, and it's I think bands like us are going to be lucky, and I think we're going to do okay, if I'm honest. But there's so much that goes into it that people don't really realize unless there's such a kind of butterfly effect across the board with touring, that if one small thing gets messed up, then a whole heap of other things get messed up. And obviously that was already bad with COVID, and now it's kind of Brexit has made it even worse and even harder. So, but again, I think feeling positive about it. I think bands like Carcass and a lot of bands will be okay, but the smaller bands and the bands that don't have as much financial support, it's fucking shit, man. It's really, really hard. But I like to think that this is relatively unprecedented. Same with COVID. I think it's going to take a few years for it to all get sorted out, and then once it gets sorted out, I like to think it's going to level itself out again, and up and coming bands are going to be able to tour easier and all that kind of, I really hope. Anyway, so I'm trying to be positive. So I hope that gives you some kind of answer. But yeah, I think Carcass will be okay. I think a lot of bands will be okay because we have to deal with this kind of stuff anyway. COVID's been a bigger deal than Brexit will be. I guess that's my opinion anyway. Number 2, how do you see the music industry post-COVID in terms of attendance at shows and profitability for bands? Again, yeah, COVID's a bigger hit for us for sure. I honestly have no idea, and everybody I know in the industry and all my promoter friends, they have no idea either. They don't know how long it's going to take before we can get back to whatever normal is going to be, if we're going to go back to normal. Because everyone's talking about masks being in our future forever now. So I honestly couldn't tell you, but it's definitely going to be different. I don't know if it's going to be worse. It's just going to be different, and I'm trying to hold out positivity that whatever different is, it's still going to be cool because we're still going to be able to watch live music and see bands and hear music and and all that kind of stuff. So again, I'm holding out positivity for it being all right because we have to, I guess, don't we? Right. Also, finally, how do you see Carcass progressing musically in the next 5 to 10 years? Honestly, 10 years, I don't know if that'll be a thing. 10 years, I don't know, because Bill and Jeff are in their early 50s. I don't know if they'll want to keep going in their 60s, but you never know. I honestly don't know. I think again, this pandemic has really thrown a kind of spanner in the works with all music kind of stuff, and the way Carcass writes music is like there's not really any technology involved. It's get in a room, jam it out until you've got a song, and that takes a long time, hence why it's been 8 years or so since the since the last album. But yeah, so I think I don't really know, because we're not going to be able to write any more music together, and because I've suggested and we've talked about doing stuff via email, and that's just not the way the band works, and it never has and it never will. So I think we'll have to wait until we can get back in a room together to see what happens. And it's funny because I speak to the guys regularly. We speak once a week pretty much, and just by text or whatever. And Bill hasn't played with a pick since in like 8 months or something, I think he said. And Jeff hasn't touched his bass since the last show, which was over a year ago. So, so whenever we get back together to jam, well, not jam, but just to practice ready for. Tom, our guitar player in the States, he practices every day. He practices like the Carcass set every single day. So respect to Tom. But the rest of us are just kind of just a bit lazier. But Tom's going to be smashing it, and we're just going to be like fainting on stage. But yeah, so we're gonna, just to even get into gigging shape, we're gonna have to do a lot of work in a practice room. So I honestly don't know. Like, if COVID hadn't have happened, I would have said we would have probably cracked on with another new album, relatively soon. But yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you. I think you just have to watch this space. I think having this, I like to think that having this break will give all of us like a new lease of life, and we'll want to go at it hard, while Bill and Jeff still want to, considering their age and stuff. So yeah, so I hope that answers those questions. Cool. Right, so next question. Right, I think maybe I'll just finish these messages, and then that'll be it. And then next time, and then I'll maybe do a part 2, if that's all right with everybody. Sorry that it's taken so long. Right, would love to know more about your time in Trigger the Bloodshed and the album you did with them. Some bangers on it. Yeah, cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, Trigger was just one of the best times. Yeah, in my life, actually. It was it was kind of like I was in Aborted for 3 years. I can't remember if I've already talked about this. I've been talking for so long. So sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I was in Aborted for about 3 years. Incredible experience. And then moved to Trigger the Bloodshed which was a very different experience. Aborted was very, it had kind of management and tour bookers and, even though it wasn't fucking Metallica, it was very organised and we had hotels and we had tour buses and van drivers, and then Trigger was completely DIY, as I said. With I can't remember if we had a tour booker, but so I joined Trigger, and it was by far the hardest thing musically I'd ever done, and I still have ever done. Everyone in that band was just, or still is, as far as I'm aware, completely good, just incredible at their instrument, and it pushed me to a whole nother level of kind of drumming that I never thought I was probably capable of. Because if anyone hasn't heard Trigger the Bloodshed, it's super, super fast, super, super technical. And obviously Aborted was a very fast band as well, but Trigger was kind of the next level. Aborted now with Ken Bedeni is unreal. So so check out Aborted, they're fucking smashing it, and Ken is an incredible drummer. But so Trigger was just a real amazing experience in a lot of ways. Like I learned so much about being a musician, and a lot about discipline, because it was so fast and so technical. That was the most I think I'd ever practiced, and I had to be on top of my game before we went on tour every time. Like and talking about like speed drills, I had to do consistent speed drills. Like I could barely take a couple of days off, and I had to really warm up before every show to make sure I did consistent warm ups. I just kind of really I was really pushed in that band, which was amazing. Like it was amazing to have that kind of push, and that kind of having to kind of keep up with that level of player, which they all were incredible in the band. So and we were all similar age, we were all into similar styles of music. We all had we're all from the UK, all had similar kind of sense of humour, so we just got on incredibly well, and it was just great fun. But it got to a point where, because as anybody who knows, again, being in an extreme metal band, especially a band that extreme, it's incredibly fucking hard to make money, and we all got to a point where it was just hard to keep it sustainable. And Martin, the guitar player, was the first one to leave, and then to do other stuff, he joined band called Bleed From Within from the UK. Great band, great drummer. I'm going to get him on soon as well. Ali, shout out to Ali. And he moved, and then I got an offer to session for Heaven Shall Burn, and it was good money and stuff, and so me and Martin kind of broke off a bit, and then it just kind of everyone just, I think, decided to do their own thing, and it's a shame, because it was so much fun, but and it was just so extreme and awesome, and we're still great friends now. That there's absolutely no bad blood, and we all still talk regularly, and they're all doing their own thing. Martin is now a successful guitar tech. He works with he's worked with Carcass a couple of times, actually. Works with Architects. Johnny, the singer, is front of house guy now, and he works for Architects too and a bunch of other bands. Rob's got a very good job. He's got family in London and stuff, and Dave, the bass player, lives out in Canada, and he's like crazy super scientist, mathematician working for the government or something. So so everyone's doing their own thing, and they're all very successful and happy as far as I'm aware. But it's a shame, and I'd love to say that we'd do something else together, but I just don't know if we could find the time realistically these days. Maybe like Carcass will come back when we're like 50 and try and play all those incredibly fast songs again. But so there you go. There's a bit about Trigger. I hope that's enough. Right, so I'm gonna go with Anders. He asks, as a drummer, what are you looking for in a bass player in terms of teaming up in a rhythm section? Right, so that's interesting, because obviously bass players and drummers traditionally kind of go together. But if I'm honest, in a lot of the music I've played, the bass has never really been that key at locking in with drums. It's usually just been more guitar based, because obviously I generally play extreme metal, but I've been in two projects where the bass has been a very kind of drum related situation. And one of them was, I did a project with Kai Hansen from Halloween and Gamma Ray, it was his solo project that he did, and I played drums on it. And the bass player was the guitar player of Heaven Shall Burn, and he was playing bass on that album. And, like, me and him, we're really good friends. Ali Dietz, love you, Ali. Um, we had a lot of fun, like being a bass and drum kind of team, which is kind of the first time it ever happened to me. So, and another time was with a band called Savage Messiah. I did a session for those, studio session, and their bass player Mira is a incredible, like, proper serious bass player. And again, his stuff is really noticeable and locks in with drums. And I think it's hard to know again because I haven't had a huge amount of experience with the bass player drummer dynamic, but like with anybody, I think awareness of other musicians is always key. Like I've worked with, or I've played with, musicians who just are in their own world and don't even listen to the drums, let alone the other musicians, and it just makes everything sound horrible and sloppy. So I think for any musician, awareness, self-awareness, like being aware of what you're playing, but also awareness of others and being aware of what others are playing, what is so paramount, especially in a live situation, because things can derail very, very quickly, especially if you've got bad monitors and all that stuff. So so I just think self-awareness and knowing your parts is classic. Again, I've been in situations where at least one member didn't know the songs anywhere near as well as they should have. Hope that helps. Right, I'll move on to Chris. This is Chris. What was it like to take over from Ken, and what tracks did you play in your audition? Yeah, good question. Surreal, I guess, is the main takeaway from that. I think it was like the whole Carcass experience, like, because at the time I just finished sessioning with Heaven Shall Burn, which was an amazing 2 or 3 year experience. Trigger the Bloodshed had kind of stopped because everyone had kind of moved on, and I was living at my mum's. I was kind of driving, half delivery driving, half driving bands around for a living, barely making any money, and just wanting to play drums. And I was kind of really depressed, like for a whole bunch of months. I can't remember how long it was, like 6 or 8 months. It was just, it just wasn't great. And I was kind of doing part-time work here and there, and just still drumming, obviously. But and then just out of nowhere, I got a Facebook message off Jeff, because when I was in Aborted, we toured with Carcass in 2008 on their reunion tour, and we got on well. I mean, especially Bill. Me and Bill spoke a bunch of times, and got on well with him. Spoke to Jeff a few times too. Again, I wouldn't, we weren't friends at the end of the tour, but we got on all right. We spoke a bit, and then I just got this random Facebook message saying, "What's your number? I need to give you a call." And I was like, "Oh my god, what the fuck?" So this was probably like 2000 and when would it have been? 2011. So it had been, a whole bunch of years since. No, when was it? 2012, I guess. Yeah. So it'd been a few years since we toured with them, and I was like, shit, what did I do on that tour? Like, fuck, am I in trouble? Like, oh my god. So I got him. So sent him my number, and then he called pretty much immediately, and he just said, "How would you feel about coming up to London to jam with us?" And I was a bit like, "Who's us?" Like, because I thought, Carcass had kind of stopped again, and I thought, oh, maybe he's got another band on the horizon or something. Because as far as I was aware, Carcass weren't doing anything. And I was like, "Do you mean Carcass?" And he said, "Of course I mean Carcass, you tit." And I was just like, yeah, sure, yeah, yeah, in my head thinking like, why, why do you want me? Like, what the fuck? And then Bill wanted to call me, and then me and Bill had a really nice chat, quite a long chat. I can't remember what we even talked about then, but we just had a chat on the phone, and he gave me a handful of songs to learn, and from my memory it was Corporeal Jigsaw Quandary, Heartwork, and shit, I think it was This Mortal Coil or No Love Lost. Anyway, it was 3 songs. I'm pretty sure it was those. God, I should remember this. But and then I went up to London, and we all met in London, and we're in this little rehearsal studio, which is the rehearsal studio where we wrote Surgical Steel, and we rehearsed regularly for years. It's now a block of flats now. It's been torn down, which sucks. But yeah, we played the 3 songs through, and we just played them through once, and they were like, "Yeah, that was cool. Should we go get a beer?" And then we just went round the corner to a pub, and the rest of the afternoon we just drank beer and chatted. And then we went back to pack down all the gear, and Jeff just said, "So do you think this is something you'd be interested in putting your time to?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" So, and yeah, that was it really. It was super kind of super, I don't know, super chilled. It was, there was no pressure. And then, yeah, it took me a while for it really kicked in, that I was playing for Carcass and that I was replacing Ken. And obviously I learnt a lot about Ken's situation over the coming months and stuff. And I finally got to meet him. I met him for the first time in the studio, which is crazy. Again, like, we went straight from no shows, didn't play a show together, to recording an album. So within a couple of months, me and Bill I'd auditioned, and then within a few weeks, actually, even me and him were in a rehearsal room just writing an album together, which was crazy. And then, in the studio, Ken came down to do some guest vocals. Well, not guest vocals, but to do some vocals. And and I met him then, and it was, I was shitting myself about meeting him, because I was like, oh my god, what if he hates me? What if I'd say something stupid and fuck it all up? And but he literally could not have been more of a gentleman, and just not even that. He's just the nicest bloke ever, and he was just so supportive of me and the band on every level. So and he's come to a bunch of shows, and we text every now and again, and he's just a lovely guy. And it's unbelievably surreal for me being in this position, but also it's made so much more surreal and so much better that he is also unbelievably lovely and supportive. He could have quite easily just been like, "Fuck you, kid," but he just hasn't been. He's been the opposite, and it's just, yes, it's incredible. Ken is just the best ever. I mean, I hope to get him. I really hope to get him on the podcast. I don't know if it'll be possible with his situation, but yeah, fingers crossed. But yeah, so that's the Carcass bit of the Carcass situation, I guess. Did I miss anything there? I can't remember. Right. Anyway, I hope that helps. I will move on. Hope I'm not missing anything. Right, let's go. Right, this is from Tom. Hi Dan, I have a question for the podcast. It's not particularly drums specific, but a wider question. How do you balance your touring work life with being a dad? Thanks. Yeah, good question. I mean, it's never been a massive issue for me, I think, because me and my wife met when I was touring a lot. And we were together for a long time before we had kids. And ever since they were young, I've kind of always been away. I mean, they're still very young, and I think, if I'm honest, the struggle is going to come for me when, if and when this all gets back to normal, and I have to go away and they're bigger and they understand what's actually happening. Like, I haven't experienced that yet. Like, me and my wife are quite independent people, so she kind of enjoys it when I go away, because she gets the house to herself and stuff, and she likes kind of looking after the kids by herself, and doing everything her own way and not having me mess everything up. And and vice versa. Like, I'm quite happy being by myself, looking after the kids. And this job is quite good in the fact that I can be away for 6 weeks, but then I can be home for a month, and I have nothing to do in that month. So I'm just with the children. I'm with the boys every single day for a month. So that's, I'm really lucky that I don't have to work or have a part-time job when I'm home. So, so in a lot of ways, it's better than a lot of situations. Of course, it's hard, but I think every situation is difficult in different ways. But I'm lucky. Or up until now, I've been really lucky to have extended periods of time at home where I don't have to do anything, and I can just be with the kids. And again, this last year, I've pretty much just been dadding for the most part. And so I've spent more time with them now than I ever have, and it's been incredible. But yeah, so it's going to be a different situation as and when we go away again, because they're older now and they understand. They'll probably understand what it means for me to go away, and it's going to be tough for my wife because she's back in full time working and she's got a really high pressure job. So, yeah, again, it's never, thankfully, because of me and my wife being independent and the kids being younger. It's never been a huge thing. Obviously, I miss them like crazy when I'm away, but outside of that, practically, it's it's worked quite well. But I think it's gonna be trickier the older they get. Let's put it that way. So I hope that helps. I think I think the key is um, being all right with not being all right with leaving them, but understanding that in my situation, it's the best job I could ever ask for, and if I was working a job I hated and only seeing them every weekend and in the evenings, and I still hated the job, that would be much harder than going away for a bunch of weeks to do a job that I absolutely love. And I think it's having your partner understand as well, because my wife completely understands that too. And again, me and my wife being independent people, we don't 100% rely on each other. That really helps. But yeah, I don't know if that's advice or whatever. This is some kind of therapy for me. But yeah. Right then. So this one's from Juan. I think it's Juan. It says, "Oh, how did you come to Carcass?" I haven't said that. Oh no, I have. Yeah, we I toured. I was playing for Aborted. We toured with Carcass. And for whatever reason, Bill liked my drumming in Aborted, and when they came to wanting another drummer, they got in touch with me. Experience with the guys, best dudes ever, legends. I love it. Can't wait to get back touring with them. Do you want to talk about the new Carcass album? I hope you can answer. Cheers, man. Yeah. So, new album should be coming this year. It's yeah. I don't know. I honestly don't want to say too much. It's very different from Surgical Steel in a lot of ways. It has some traditional Carcass elements, but it's also got some shit the band has never, ever, ever done before. It's got some stuff that I've never, ever, ever done before, never even thought about doing. It's, I think it's the best album the band's ever done. That's a controversial statement, and I'm biased, but yeah, so it's almost a shame that the EP came out first, because they're the songs that we didn't really like. I mean, people seem to be liking them, which is good, but we didn't put them on the album for a reason. It's because we didn't like them. But and, a lot of people keep asking us what's going on, but unfortunately, in these situations, it's not up to us, because the label have paid us money to make this album. This is being completely upfront with everybody, and they basically have the rights to reclaim that money however they see fit, and that's kind of why we're just kind of waiting for them to tell us the next move. So, and yeah, it is shit. It's a shit for us as it is for anybody, because we've spent years on this album. We want everyone to hear it, but it will be out at some point, hopefully this year, and hopefully yeah. So I don't want to say too much, because I want everyone to kind of be surprised by it and love it. So, but yeah, it will be out, and it's some of the best stuff that the band's ever done. So I hope that's some insight. Probably not. Right, I got a couple more, and then I'm gonna say goodbye for now, because this is turning into a fucking crazy long one. Right, it's from Martin. What's up, dude? How was the songwriting process with Trigger the Bloodshed? Was it in a jam room? Did you have a lot of say? Because they were used to an extremely fast drummer, did you feel you had big shoes to fill? Yeah, the fast drummer thing, absolutely. Like I've said before, I really had to push myself to the craziest limits that I've ever pushed myself in that band for speed and creativity and all that stuff. So yeah, I felt a lot of pressure, and I did a lot of practicing and speed specific practicing, especially to get to that point where I felt comfortable. And it took me a good 6 to 8 months of playing with them live before I felt kind of quote unquote comfortable in that situation. So yeah, so that was big shoes to fill. The songwriting process, it was very. Those guys were very involved in the drum side of things. Like they all of them. Rob and Dave mainly wrote the songs. Martin did a bit of songwriting too, and they were good at programming drums, and they also had really good drum writing ideas. So so a lot of the stuff that was in there was stuff that I had to do. That, they'd made a guitar player version of it, and it wasn't physically possible on drums, so I had to kind of make it possible, as it were. So so that's what that's all about. And so obviously I had a lot of freedom, but they had a lot of input in the drums, which was really cool for me because they had a lot of really interesting ideas and really insanely crazy ideas. Because they were just super technical and super good musicians. So it really pushed me, and it was just overall a great experience. And maybe I'll be in a band that hard again, or maybe Trigger the Bloodshed will do something again. But that was definitely that was a testing moment for me. It was kind of like the holy grail of pushing myself. But it was great fun. Miss those guys. But right, okay. I'm going to do the last. There's a couple of questions in here. Right. This is from Nathan Perrier, legend. What's up, Nathan? Great drummer from the London area. Right, so this is going to be the last one, I'm afraid, everybody, because I've been an hour and a half in. I said I was only going to do an hour, but this has been, it's too many questions. I'll have to do a part 2, so we'll keep in touch about that. Right, so last ones. A couple of questions for you. Never been a trigger guy, but once used Dan Ford's triggers. Dan Ford is the drummer of Sixth, by the way, who's an incredible drummer. Triggers and kick on a tour, and it was super fun and easier to articulate. Would you say using triggers is beneficial in developing double bass chops over not using them? Obviously, there is a movement away from triggers right now, but do you feel they helped in developing your technique? Yes and no. I think we've talked about on the podcast before that triggers. I mean, I hate this trigger hate that everybody has, trigger negativity. I think triggers absolutely have time and a place, and they're totally necessary for certain styles of music, especially super extreme metal. But as far as learning, I mean, I'm quite lucky that I've had two experiences. So with almost every other band I've ever been in, it's been 100% trigger, and then with Carcass I got thrown in with no triggers, just microphones, and it's taken me years to move away from what it's like to play with triggers, because playing with triggers you don't have to worry about tuning, you don't have to worry about head tension. I mean, the only reason you worry about bass drum head tension is so that the trigger pick triggers properly. It's nothing to do with sound. So you can make it feel however you want. You can make it sound however you want with no negative connotations, because the trigger is doing all the work. So that in itself is, it makes it its whole thing, because then when you move it over to microphones, all you have to think about is the sound. So if you set your bass drum up with how you like it to feel, the likelihood is it's going to sound like shit. So so you need to kind of morph how you play depending on how good you want it to sound, if you know what I mean. So, and also there's dynamics involved with microphones. So, it's just two completely different worlds. It's a really interesting question. I think, if I'm honest, learning how to be tight and learning how to control your feet, triggers, yes, are good, because it's instant reaction. It's an instant click sound. So, if you want to learn how to control and be tight, you can hear everything perfectly, absolutely perfectly, and that's a really great way to see what you're doing wrong, probably. And because obviously if your feet aren't very good, then triggers are going to accentuate that. They're not going to make that any better. I hate all this fucking triggers cheating bullshit. So I think definitely triggers are good for that, definitely to kind of understand and control your feet. But in a musical context, kick drums brings so much other stuff, like kick drum microphone brings so much other stuff. So like, again, dynamics, learning how to not make the slow bits super loud and then the fast bits super quiet, learning how to kind of even it out, again, digging into the drum enough so that you get a good tone out of the drum. Because again, you can with triggers you can just tap away and there's no difference. So yeah, it's a really hard question, but I think there's massive benefits to both, and I think if you're able to do both, if you're able to practice regularly with both, that is ideal. I know that's probably not possible for most people, but yeah, I think they're both different beasts, and they both bring very different things to the table. And I mean, I still like playing with triggers every now and again. I'm kind of on a microphone realistic kick, if that makes sense, at the moment. So I'm leaning more towards microphone at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's answered the question. I've just kind of rambled for 5 minutes. But yeah, they're both very different, and they both serve different purposes. But I definitely think triggers do have their benefits, especially if you're trying to kind of tighten up your feet, maybe because you can hear yourself better, which is very important. Right, okay, I'm going to move on to these last couple of bits. Right, so pedals, chain or direct drive? Chain, all the way. I've always been a chain drive guy. Something about direct drives I don't love. I think I always like a little bit of almost like lag on the pedal. I like to feel like I'm doing more than the pedal is, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, I just prefer the feel of chain. I don't like the lightness generally of direct drives. A little bit too light. I like heavy pedals. I will be honest, the Tama Dynasync, the new Tama direct drives are the best direct drives that I've played, and that's not just because I'm biased, obviously, because I'm a Tama artist, but it's because they are kind of somewhere in between a direct drive and probably like a belt drive. They're closer to like a belt drive kind of feel, but you can also kind of edit them so much that you can make them feel like a regular chain drive pedal, so they're really, really interesting. But on the whole, chains for me, 100%, double chain all the way. You can just kick it harder and, go a bit more crazy. Right, chocolate or cake? Oh, 100% chocolate. Chocolate all the way. My wife likes cake and I like chocolate. So which is kind of good. I mean, I like cake. I'll eat cake. But fucking chocolate, dude. I could eat chocolate all day. And I do pretty much eat chocolate all day at the moment because it's COVID pandemic. Who cares? But yeah, so chocolate. Right. Any underground bands you're into right now? I'm not sure if I've mentioned them already, but Benighted, one of my favourite bands at the moment. French death metal band. Baptists, Canadian kind of power violence-y band. I can't think of any more off the top of my head. Oh man, this is tough. I should have done more preparation, shouldn't I? Right, I'm gonna have to do a Q&A part 2, aren't I? And fill in all the blanks on these. He says one more. King Diamond or Merciful Fate? If I'm honest, not a huge fan of either. It's a real sticking point in Carcass, because obviously they're huge fans of both, and I've just never really got it. I think it's his voice. I've never been a big fan of that kind of vocal. But definitely Merciful Fate of the two. But again, not a huge fan of either, so sorry to offend anyone or piss anyone off. Bringing Deftones influences into Carcass, and not saying I like King Diamond or Merciful Fate. It's just sacrilege, isn't it? But yeah, so I think that's all I'm going to do for now, because it's been an hour and a half. I said I was going to keep it to an hour, but I didn't. And so I'm sorry about that. I hope this has been all right for everybody, and I hope this hasn't been too boring. If you've made it to an hour and a half, respect of just listening to my voice, then you're probably a little bit crazy. But yeah, respect to you. But yeah, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. I'll definitely do another one of these so that I can get some more questions from you in and answer some more questions, and maybe I'll structure it and prepare it a little bit more next time so that it doesn't take so long and I just ramble on for so long. But yeah, thank you so much to absolutely everybody. There's been a couple of, obviously, questions about merch. I've been speaking to my merch friends over the last couple of weeks, so keep posted. There will be some podcast merch, which is going to be sick. And yeah, just keep on with the podcast. Next week is going to be a really good one, and I've got 2 more guests lined up directly after that, and then, yeah, who knows what will happen from there. It's just... it's fun. It's all good fun. So yeah, thank you so much to everybody for listening. If you've listened to all of this, you're a legend. Thank you to everybody for the questions. And I will see you or speak to you all next week. Have a good week. Stay safe. And cheers, guys. Bye.